episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. And it feels like we were just together. We were just covering the Michelle Troconis trial together. It just convened, court did. It adjourned, I should say, at 4:45 p.m. Eastern time, and here we are back with a very important story. And before I get going, I saw him in the chat, so special shout out to Matt McMahon for helping facilitate this. He is the father of Rachel's oldest child, Rachel Morin, and we are going to actually hear from her tonight, thanks to Tim Papa, one of our guests, for the very first time ever, except for the fact that Tim had it on his YouTube channel last night. So almost ever. It's been more than 5 months. This murder happened back on August 5th, I believe. August 5th. I have to double check that. It's either the 5th or the 6th. But it's been more than 5 months, nevertheless, since a Maryland mother of 5 was murdered, brutally murdered on a hiking trail in Maryland. It is known as the Ma and Pa Trail. The Harford County Sheriff, Sheriff Gaylor, has come out and said that the death was, quote unquote, a violent homicide. The family, Rachel has a very big family, an extended family, and they need everyone's help to catch the killer. This story was making headlines day in, day out back in August. And as is often the case, as I can attest to as a former media guy, it starts to go cold. There's no killer caught. The days pass, they turn into weeks, the weeks turn into months, and suddenly the media retreats. They'll all jump back on it when this killer is caught, and that killer will be caught. But for now, it's gotten awfully quiet. So the people that don't get quiet are the trio you see here. These are best guests. Tim Papa, who I'm going to get to in a moment, is a first-time best guest. Scott Duffey, he's been on this show a million times. He obviously hosts with me and Phil Waters every Friday, and he's going to be back tomorrow, and he's going to talk about Michelle Troconis a little bit. He is in his office. The first time we've seen him in his office, the director of the Wilmington University's Criminal Justice Institute. He is a retired FBI supervisory special agent, not just a special agent, but a supervisory one out of the Delaware office. He worked gangs, bank robberies, narcotics, fugitive task force cases for 20 plus years. Scott and I have a fun little game with Phil where I send them all the Ferraris I see in Miami, which is like 37 a day. And yesterday Scott said, "Hey, how come there's so many Ferraris in Miami?" And I said, "It's because you didn't catch all the drug dealers in Delaware, so all their money got down here, and they are buying Ferraris with them." He was also a Pennsylvania police officer for 5.5 years prior to that. Next up, he was accused of wearing a bathrobe, but let me assure you, this is Doug McGregor in a very trendy sweater. And in Canada, they are much more chic than us. I was just in Montreal, froze my ass off, but Doug McGregor is in Canada, and they have a lot better style than us. So do not mistake that for a bathrobe. He is better known, Doug McGregor, as the geo-profiler. He's a former forensic behavioral analyst and a consultant specializing in geo-profiling and linkage analysis for violent crime and missing persons. He has a Master of Science from Missouri State University and lives in Ottawa, Canada, with his wife and 2 children. And last but not least, you have Tim Papa. He is a certified former profiler with the FBI's behavioral analysis unit. One of my favorite guests ever, who began his work in the FBI on July something, 1969, the month that I was born and the year. That's Greg McCrary. He was also at one point in the BAU, but Tim joined the FBI in late 2008 as a special agent, serving nearly 16 years in various investigative roles, including the last nearly half dozen as an FBI profiler. And while at the BAU, Tim pioneered the development of behavioral content creation, supporting state and local cold case investigations across the country. We're going to find out exactly what that means on his YouTube channel. He was the first to have it. He's got video clips of Matt McMahon and Rachel Morin's daughter, and those live on his YouTube channel at storytellers.design. That's at storytellers.design. A very long intro, I know, which is going to go a second longer. To remind you to please support us on Patreon, YouTube. You can give us 5 stars and listen to us on Spotify, all the audio platforms. And there you see it, a QR code. I didn't even call for it. It's up there. My new book is available for pre-order. It's the most important story I've ever told, all kidding aside. It's my mother's Holocaust story, as well as life advice from her. And you guys know that she and I are very tight, but I think her advice is pertinent to a lot of people all over the world. So please pre-order, and you'll see just how crazy a family we have. So there you go. Tim Papa, since you're a first-time guest here, just sort of fill in the blanks, and we're going to get to Rachel, obviously, but tell us what you pioneered in terms of this content creation idea.
Sure. No, thank you, Joel, for having me on the show. Using video to message certain kind of audiences, and this goes beyond, say, providing like a strategy, right, to a chief of police on maybe how they should do their press conference or what kind of press release language to put out there. This is a little bit different. It's not novel in the sense that it hasn't been used already, right, in corporate media in terms of marketing strategies and consumer psychology, but using it to message particular kind of audiences in law enforcement, that's a little bit different, right? So what we're talking about is taking those practices and consumer psychology and any kind of behavioral framework that would apply, right? It might be something like how we consider emotion, how people respond to emotional content. Maybe it comes down to what we know about someone we're trying to reach or communicate to, that they're going to be responsive to. There's a design to it. There's a behavioral design to it. And we try to apply all those principles when we craft something. So maybe a good example as a contrast is public information officers want to put out information to raise awareness and hope that people come forward with information. This one is behavioral content creation is much more targeted and much more crafted. You don't want people just to think and feel things. You want them to respond behaviorally. And that's not always about coming forward with a tip, right? It might be something like the relationship between people in this town and a family that's of interest to people that people think might be responsible for a murder. Maybe presenting that family in a different perspective. Well, the whole thing kind of comes back to, what do people consume the most? What do people share the most? What's the best way to reach people? And that's online on their phones with short videos that are emotional. So that's behavioral content creation. We try to craft it as much as we can for a particular audience with a particular kind of messenger.
Wow. So that's really fascinating to me, because I always ask guys like Scott Duffey, I always ask them, how is technology changing, crime? And this is helping crime solving using really these new mediums that are becoming the mainstream is the old stream. And now what you're saying is you're creating emotionally responsive videos that you're putting, or videos that elicit emotions. You're putting them out on the TikToks and the Instagrams to try to see if you can, I don't know, like jigger something loose in terms of a potential lead. Am I right about that?
No, yeah, you are right. I think most of the research out there is focused on broad audiences. Like you can look at research and advertising in marketing, and they're talking about broad segments of audiences or consumers. This is very focused. So if we're in a particular kind of case and we can understand, say, the objectives of a law enforcement agency, but maybe in this case, the objectives of a family, well, we really want to craft what it is you're trying to communicate, who's communicating, and to whom. So if it's a situation where we're trying to message specifically the person responsible for a crime, if we know a little bit about their family dynamics, if we know a little bit about their social circle, that could certainly inform the kind of content we create. Should it be in a foreign language? Where should we focus this kind of content? Who should be the person speaking? And where should we film it? I mean, even the aspect of creating the content is behavioral and design, because it does make a difference in terms of where you film that. Of course, aesthetics are important and people want quality content. But at the end of the day, if there's an opportunity to take a moment on film and share one aspect of someone's life so that viewers can connect with that person on film, that's what we're trying to achieve in this respect, right? Because in this particular case with the Morin family, these videos aren't being made with the sheriff's office, it's just being made with the family. So that's an adjustment, but it's still applying the same kind of principles. When we know as much as we can, then we can really craft that content to try and elicit a behavioral response from the target of that content.
And I'm just people get mad at me, but I'm taking a note right here. And I'm going to come back to Tim Papa, but that's why I'm on my phone. I'm always taking notes for a follow-up question here. And I will circle back, but I want to get the other guys in here. And Doug, just for the record, the woman that scares me the most next to my wife and my mother is Black Widow from the Republic of Ireland. And she says, that's a jacket, Joel, for F's sakes. For the record, once and for all, Doug McGregor, is that a jacket or some sort of sweater? Let us know.
I don't know. I'd call it an overcoat, a sweater. Either one works.
He doesn't seem to care. So Doug McGregor is just simply known as the geo profiler. Now, we just heard about content creation from a behavioral aspect. Explain to the audience again what you do as a geo profiler.
Of course. I also look at the behavioral aspect of offenders, victimology, crime scenes. When I'm looking at it, I'm focusing specifically on the spatial, the temporal, environmental, and the geographic aspects of behavior. You know, just as people, how we interact with our environments, how we move from A to B. You know, what we can ascertain from analyzing the different components of the crime scene and the victim, who they are, how they were victimized, and the offender. So if we have information on the offender, we can use geographic profiling to, in its most classic sense, if there's a serial killer, we can try to figure out where that serial killer lives, works, plays. So those are kind of, in a nutshell, the components of behavior that I look at.
And we're going to get into that. Scott Duffey, we all know Scott, and he's going to be back on the show tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern time after the Michelle Troconis trial. And one of the things I'm going to have Phil and Scott do tomorrow that he doesn't even know yet is going to have them watch some of Michelle Troconis's police interrogations and have them break it down, because the body has never been found. In that case, we're talking about Jennifer Farber Dulos. Her body is somewhere. But Lorna McKenzie says, Scott Duffey, someone knows where this guy is. And this is the guy we're talking about. Do you agree? Oh, by the way, Tim Papa is a dreamboat. I was waiting to pull that one up. I didn't mean to do it right now, but we have come full circle because Tommy Scoville, who hosts The Lifeboat, which is for sobriety, he's in the chat. Love that dude. He is a guy that Scott Duffey would have tried to catch. He's a former bank robber who served hard time, but he has turned his life around, and he is a great guy. I bet you Tommy and Scott Duffey, ironically, would be great friends. And Tommy likes to scare the crap out of me about state prison and federal prison. By the way, Scott Duffey, do you know that when you take a shower in state prison, you've got to have someone, it's called suited and booted, that's outside the shower protecting you? Do you know this, Scott Duffey?
Tommy When you say suited and booted, do you mean one of their friends or somebody who's an employee?
So Tommy Scoville taught this to me, suited and booted. When you shower in state prison, you got to have one of your buddies that's got his boots on, ready to kick the crap out of someone if they try to come to get you in the shower. You take a shower, suited and booted. You have a friend standing guard. How scary is that?
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever, I mean, I assume that. I don't think I ever talked to anybody who gave you the details.
Scott's like, Jesus, I got back into the show again. I could have waited another day. But look, here's the video right here. Scott Duffey, are we going to ever catch this guy? This is the perp. We've seen this video a million times. This is from Los Angeles in April, an alleged home invasion. And you can see the guy obviously shirtless. People have analyzed it. You can see the brightness of his cell phone in his right pocket, walking away. Some people say he looks like an MMA fighter because he appears to have cauliflower ears, which I can't tell from that perspective. But Scott Duffey, the short answer, will he be caught?
Yes, he will. Absolutely. No doubt in my mind. But every day that goes by, it's one day too long, right? Especially for the family. But I will say it is nothing lacking what law enforcement's doing. And unfortunately, in our line of work, when you have somebody who is dangerous, who the DNA is there, the DNA is encoded. So it's just a matter of now putting a name and handcuffs on this guy. But sometimes it takes a while. And I think when we first aired on this, my thought was, unless he repeats, that it could take some time, and it offers hope to the family that he will absolutely be caught. But, just in Philadelphia, within the last 30 days, a subject was finally nabbed in the act by law enforcement of committing a violent crime on someone. And what do? We take DNA, and Philadelphia police then matched him to a crime and a murder 20 years earlier. So my hope is that this will be soon, but these things can take time until, unfortunately, this guy has repeated and messes up and is caught, or somebody who, like one of your viewers said, hey, somebody knows him and is going to drop the dime on him. So that's what it's going to take.
And Tim, in your experience, going back to sort of the behavioral aspect of things, and you can see here this $30,000 reward, tips, RM tips at harfordsheriff.org. The number is 410 for those listening, 836-7788, 410-836-7788. Before I go to Tim, I was going to ask you, Tim, because I'll forget the question, if there's any way this guy wouldn't be a repeat offender. I mean, if you bludgeon a woman to death the way he did, let's get to the question first. Will he strike again, in your opinion? Is it almost certain that he will strike again?
Well, I mean, I think any approach, and I think obviously the other panelists would agree with me, if you're thinking about victimology and the relationship between an offender and a victim, for all we know, he did not know her. It appears he didn't know her. But in terms of like a random victim that he assaulted, has he probably tried this before? There's probably been some habituation. I think generally we approach any kind of event like this in that way, right? There's probably been some habituation. It's very difficult to kill someone. You have to have a lot of strength to do that and to go through with it. So where he would have done that before, I don't know. But typically, if you have someone who probably lives in a particular kind of area, and as far as you know, an unknown offender even may have been involved in a sexual assault, well, again, there's probably been some attempt before that failed, or some attempt before that wasn't fully reported. So when you look at those kind of cases that are reported where there are unknown individuals that have been accused of sexual assault, but there's not much evidence, it might be that individual. That's typically how I think as a starting point we would approach it. But I think in general, we have to be very careful in terms of if we don't know anything about that particular offender, we can't really surmise more than that other than maybe what we've seen statistically over time. But that's what I'm really appealing to or pointing to, that statistically over time and in other cases, there's some kind of habituation process to commit an act like that. Yes, it's in a park and it was during dusk, but that's still out in the public and it's still someone presumably he didn't know. So again, it's someone who might have some experience trying to do that before. Other than that, I don't know what else might be motivating him.
Joey B here. Look at this. My father graduated from the FBI Academy in 1969. That's Greg McCrary territory. I wonder if it's Greg McCrary. I'm amazed how much we have progressed in tracking down offenders. God bless you all. Again, there is the, that is in Espanol. I was wondering. It took me a second. So they believe that, at least in Los Angeles, this person could have been roaming around the Hispanic Latino community. And so they delivered flyers in Spanish, and that is the Spanish version as well. The COE fluent in Espanol, although her grandfather, may he rest in peace, his name was Papaya. That was his nickname, like the fruit. He always told me that the COE barely spoke any Spanish, but who knows? I just want to, again, reiterate this. So these three guys that you're looking at right now, in their own capacity, on their own time, who are no longer with the FBI, and Doug wasn't with the FBI, but, Doug has a full-time business, but in their own capacity, have worked to try to get answers on this case. And you don't see that very much in most professions, but these guys do this job because they care. So I just want everyone to know that, and kudos to them for doing this, basically on their own dime, on their own time. I think all three of them, if I'm correct, traveled to Maryland. Is that right? All three of you, Tim? Yes. Doug, you went down there. You drove from Canada, right, Doug? And Scott Duffey, you went there. It's crazy. So I don't often ask this. And as a matter of fact, I almost never ask this, but this particular show, to try to help Rachel's family, please share this show. Please tag it on Instagram, tag it on Twitter, on Facebook, put this show everywhere so we can try to find this guy. Please, not for these guys, but for Rachel Morin's family. But these guys are doing all their own, all their own work to try to help get them. Doug McGregor, tell me about that drive down to Maryland, all the way from, I think you're in Ottawa, just west of Montreal there. What were you hoping to see and discover? And then we'll get to the video, and then we'll discuss the video. Sure.
To start off, it was a nice drive down. It was about a 9-hour drive for me. A drive I'm used to. I went to Missouri State University, but my department was in Fairfax, Virginia, and I interned in Washington, D.C. So it was the same route all the way down. I knew the area, the geography. It's a very nice area, and I've never been to Bel Air before, but driving into Bel Air, it's a beautiful area. It's quiet, it's quaint. It's not a large town. It's got a bustling commercial area at its center, but the population's modest. It was a nice day. I was fortunate enough to meet Matt McMahon, who I think is in the chat here. He's the father of Rachel's oldest child, who's 18 years old, and as well as Michael Morin, and who's Rachel's brother, and Shannon, his wife. So the four of us, I met Matt at the Target, and then we drove over and we met Michael and Shannon at the parking lot for the trail, at the trailhead. It was my objective to kind of be there around the same time that Rachel was attacked. Obviously, she was attacked in August, and I was there on November 11th, actually. So, the seasons have changed and the vegetation was a bit different, but I got a sense for the trail and mainly a sense for, how well the trail was being used, how populated it was, what sorts of people were using the trail, what the environment around it's like. And this is a populated area, as Scott and Tim can attest to as well. It was a busy trail. There was always people in sight. I think I was on the trail around 5 p.m. And and like I said in one of the threads I put out on X, that I stood at the bend where Rachel was attacked, and I stood there for a good 15 minutes. And in either direction, there was never a moment when there wasn't somebody coming from either direction. You can see 100 yards in either direction at that point on the trail. It's well used. Lots of solo runners, couples, people biking, going for walks. Mainly adults. I didn't see any kids there on the Saturday when I was there, so it's mainly used by adults. And I think the whole trail system is about 7 kilometers long, which it shows on, if you go to All Trails, the app, or one of those kind of apps. But the main area, or the main part that's used, is quite a bit, about half that distance. And Rachel, she started her run. We were lucky enough in that when we got there, I can't remember what alias I used for him on my Twitter, on my X thread, sorry. So we'll just say that we were lucky enough to meet a man at the trailhead when we started walking the trail there on the Saturday, and it wasn't planned. We had no idea we were going to run into him. We ran into him and his wife, and he was actually there the day that Rachel was murdered, and he saw Rachel start her run, which was invaluable to us and to and myself in creating that timeline. So she started her run at about 6:59 p.m. and he had that timestamp because he had that on his I'm not sure if it was an Apple Watch or what it was. So she started her run right at 7:00, and it was daylight. And sometime between 7 and 7:30, that's when she was attacked. She was murdered. It all took place fairly quickly. It all happened very quickly. But it was, I do most of my work from behind a computer. But any chance I get, I try to get the boots on the ground, because, meeting the family members, visiting the site, there's so much more information that you can gather there. So it was an excellent experience in going down for the sake of advancing this investigation. And, I can't thank Scott and Tim enough for also, offering their assistance to the family. And Scott's been there since day one, offering his assistance to myself if I ever need it. So it's been great, and the family's been great to work with.
Scott, I'm coming to you. You're covered up, but I want to get to this comment, get your reaction. Scott Duffey, this is frightening from Lori. I'm always in the park by myself, as a lot of women are. This is really disturbing and so sad. Minding her own business, and this freak kills her. It appears it was completely random, and that is what happened. Jason Lipoff went to dental school with Charlie Adelson. He's in the chat here tonight. Shout out to Jason. Scott Duffey, first of all, just a quick couple of words to both the women predominantly and the men. If you're going out for a run in a park, especially this time of year when it gets dark out late, what is your advice, and what did you take away from your visit to Bel Air, Maryland, to the Mon Pa Trail?
So first off, I just want to say thanks to Douglas and Tim. I mean, they really went out of their way to connect with the family, and they have an expertise, and they're offering that expertise. So that's pretty cool, which all connected through the show. And for me, I felt a connection, right? We go through a lot of crimes that take place throughout the country every week, right, Joel? And we tried to give the public a general sense of what we might do, or what our first thought would be once we arrive on scene, if we were the lead investigator, just going on our past experiences. So I really felt some sort of special connection, and of course, being in my prior territory as an agent, I wanted to go down there and meet with them, very upfront with them. There's nothing that I can offer other than my thoughts. And I was very honest with them, and they were very gracious with their time. And in that, walking the trail, you get a really good sense, as opposed to when I first heard it, having never been to that trail, but having been through that town. It's an eye opener of just how public it is, in the sense of businesses and residences. And then my thought was to offer to them, hey, you must continue to bang down the door of law enforcement, right? Police departments sometimes have a tendency to get wrapped into their investigation, and especially in something that is so eye-catching to the world as such as this one. And for a department that's very much equipped, and from what I gather, doing due diligence, sometimes, and especially in my experience, and I'll, as well as in some of my cases, you have a tendency to get so wrapped into trying to find the perpetrator, the bad guy, and you sometimes forget just a message to the victim is important. And sometimes that gets lost in translation, and a victim family can have a sense of being forgotten when they're not forgotten. And that's why I tell them, I said, just continue in your pursuits of getting information, knowing that they can't receive all the information. And so I was just kind of helping them to be a go-between of, hey, this is how you can word a request or something. So not to look like you're just being nosy, but that you are absolutely have a stake in the hunt. And so that my thought was to give them a human connection to law enforcement, and to help them phrase questions or whatnot. And then, for example, as we walked the trail, pointing out the different ring cameras or surveillance cameras, and of course, the type of family that they want to jump right on it. And of course, my job is to caution them, to say, hey, you can point these things out and then give it to law enforcement to say, hey, I saw a camera, this address. Did you happen to go there? Right. And you're just trying to help be an extra eyes and ears. And so that was my wish, to go down there and not to interfere, but to help them maybe see some things that could be missed or whatnot.
I think you're muted, Joel.
Scott always catches me doing that. Just to recap here, Summer Lover, what is the Los Angeles connection? Rachel Morin was a 37-year-old mother of 5. Again, obviously, we talked about it. She was out for a hike or a run on the Monpont Trail. She goes missing. They find her the next morning. She is murdered. The initial reports are it was a brutal murder, perhaps done with a rock. They obviously got some sort of DNA. That DNA matched in the federal database system, which is called CODIS, CODIS, and it matched to a case from Los Angeles, which was first reported as some sort of sexual assault on a minor. I think they may have walked part of that back, but they knew that whoever committed this crime committed the same crime in Los Angeles in April, but they didn't get a name. And so that's sort of where we are right now. Tim Papa, I was going to come back to you. Do police get upset with your tactics? Obviously, you work for the BAU, but right now, if you go out and share this video, is that something that's going to tick off, let's say, the Harford County Sheriff's Office, that video is being circulated of Rachel's daughter? What's the kind of reaction you get from that?
I mean, I would imagine no. I that's something I try to be mindful about. A lot of my prior experience on cold cases where I would make content, typically much of my experience was with that state and local partner, not so much the family. And sometimes there'd be people in a family who are persons of interest, but obviously I'm not approaching them that way. I always have a secondary role, right? I'm not the lead detective or anything like that. I'm just supporting. I mean, BAU's role is to support state and local partners. So we're not running their case, but always trying to be mindful, even if people say something on camera, do I want to put that out there because someone will consider it slanderous, or do I want to put that out there because the offender might see that and want to physically harm that person? So when I'm filming someone, I'm probably recording them for like 45 minutes, but I'm going to make a 90-second to 2-minute video. The advantage of working with law enforcement, of course, is that you can coordinate some of that, and there's more information, right, about focusing on crafting a message. In this case, I'm just working with the family, so much of those narratives and themes are meant to share this family with the public, so they're not just another cold case. There are people that are experiencing loss and pain that we can't really understand, even if we've been through some things like that or similar things. It's their own story, and people can just get lost, right, in the sea of cases like that. I think in a lot of these things too, there's a lot of space even outside of the content that's made, because certainly there are cases I supported where we made videos, but we didn't use them because we didn't think after a certain point of time that it fit for the case anymore. But all these things come into play. As an example, and this is just my opinion because I don't have other information, but I look at, say, even that flyer in Los Angeles, and to me, I see that even if it's in Spanish language, is there are barriers there. There are barriers if I'm living in that community to come forward with any information, because I see a tip line for a law enforcement agency in Maryland and I don't know who they are, and there's no reason for me to trust them. And then I see a law firm and I don't know who they are, and there's no reason for me to trust them. So for someone who actually probably knows this guy to essentially betray that relationship for money to come forward and contact someone they don't know, generally speaking, I would say that's probably unlikely. But that's why trying to understand your audience and who is asking is so important. If I was going to redo that, I would say probably a local law enforcement agency in that neighborhood, in that city, should be the one that's asking for information. And those agencies have relationships with people in the community. And those police officers have knowledge that is not written down in reports about people in those neighborhoods who've committed certain types of assaults, but it never got written up. All those things that fall through the cracks, that's the knowledge and information you want. They're the kind of people that really add to our behavioral analysis. When I was working at BAU, we depend heavily on it. When state and local agencies would ask us, what is it that you need from us when we're starting a consult or a behavioral analysis project? Yes, we want everything you have and we want the case file, but we also would say, what's on the cutting room floor? What didn't get written up in that interview? What other interactions did you have with them? Because people are just like walking inductors of emotion and information, and those kind of engagements tell us a whole lot about those people, and that's often not recorded. So those are examples how it can be a very comprehensive and dynamic process trying to craft communications and messaging that's very effective.
And there you're seeing I'll take this comment down in a sec, but I wanted to get to it. Doug McGregor, someone had a really interesting question. And it had to do with, do you look at everything, including like regional accents and things of that nature in your geo-profiling quest? You can answer that. But also this question, again, from Tommy Scoville, who'd be friends with Scott Duffey and all you guys. How can they tell the perp didn't know the victim? Do we know for sure? It is assumed that is the case, but what are you hearing on that end? And the accent question.
Yeah, I've been watching the chat here, and there's so many questions that I would love to answer. There's a lot of great questions here from some people that know the case really well, and others that know it less so. But the just starting with the accent question, absolutely. that being said, there's hundreds, probably thousands of, regional, local accents across just the United States alone. They change from city to city, from town to town. Actually, within a couple miles, you can change accent. The accent can change slightly, as well as words used, just everything about linguistics there. When I'm trying to, figure out a piece of information like an accent, I consult an expert. I'm an expert. I consider myself, an expert professional in my field, but there's, by no means am I an expert on accents or linguistics. I've taken forensic linguistics courses, but it's fun doing this job because I get to consult all those other experts. A case I just worked, I had to consult a bear expert to figure out what a bear would do if it found a human body. So it's just, you're constantly consulting others, which is fantastic. And, to use that information.
Doug, how do you find a bear expert? You just Google? How do you know how to find these experts?
Yeah, X, Google or an X, and I just type in bear expert, and it came up. Someone was a black bear biologist. It was perfect. But going back to that question, there's some information I can give out here, some I can't. But going back to that question, how do we know that Rachel did or did not know this perp? There's some information, obviously, that police keep to themselves, that law enforcement keep to themselves. I have an open communication with the family. That being said, they have an open communication with Harford County Sheriff's office, and there's some information they withhold from the family, and then there's some information they give to the family withholds from me. So it's just, you work with what you got. But from what I understand, we do not know the source of the DNA on Rachel at this point. So at this point, am I 95% sure that the person we see in the video in LA is the offender, is the killer? Yes. However, that being said, I don't know personally. I'm just speaking as myself and being objectively what the source of the DNA is. And I'll give you an example. If the source of DNA is nonviolent, let's just say, and no disrespect to Rachel whatsoever, if it's semen, I can't tell you that that's from that instance, or that was from, having consensual sex within the last 3 days, right? I don't know that. The police know that. So the police, law enforcement, who have that information, they have to make a judgment call. Does this DNA point towards this person being the offender? And then they release that to the public, and then I work off that. So they have done that, and I am working off that, which is why I believe, again, probably about 95% that this is our offender. Looking at some of these other questions here, this offender is tough to find because, one, they've committed only 2 crimes at opposite ends of the country, and the victimology is completely different. On one end of the country, you have a youth, a female youth, and on the other end, you have a 37-year-old woman, as well as one's a home invasion. There's some gray area there because of what went on in that house that night, and at the other end, it's an attack in a public place in a park. So this person is very hard to find because they could be in Bel Air, they could be in Los Angeles, they could be anywhere in between. Now, I do have reason to believe that this person has been in Bel Air for some time, that they were possibly even spotted within around the Monpaw Trail 2 weeks prior to the attack, and possibly as far back as April of 2023. So if that is the offender, then this person definitely has some sort of anchor point in Bel Air, which is important because other people may have seen him within the last year. Anyway, there's many other questions here, but that I'd love to answer, but I don't want to take up all the time.
No,
so
that's
Scott or Tim.
Well, that's super fascinating to me. Talking to these 3 guys right now, because this is an unsolved case, and I've told Scott this before, but you can see the investigative wheels in their heads spinning in real time, and the stuff that Doug was just saying about being a tough offender to catch, because on the West Coast, it was a young victim. On the East Coast, it was an older victim. As far as we know, he hasn't offended anyone else, but that could definitely not be the case. He could have, and we just don't know it yet. Maxie Doodle here, please help me understand. The man at the California house is a suspect. He's leaving that house. Why can't law enforcement and the law require the residents of that address to supply a name? Because he was assaulting someone in that house, so there's a very good chance they did not know who he was. Now, there are some people out there, we don't know, who think that someone in that house may have known who he is, but so far, obviously, no connection like that has been made. I'm going to get back to Scott on the investigation very quickly. Doug, back to you. And then I want to show this video. It's important. From our mod, I am not T-Pain. Do any of you, Doug McGregor, think he's across the border by now? Because he appears to be a Hispanic male, a lot of people think that he has fled to Mexico. What kind of percentage would you put that at, Doug?
From the information that I have that I can divulge, he's Hispanic. He's an Hispanic male. If he has family, let's just put it this way: if he has family south of the U.S. border, of course, there's always a possibility that he could have left the U.S. to any number of countries. In saying that, I will also say that he is a very fluent in English. And that's important because he's not someone that's just come across the border, knows no English, hasn't been in the United States for very long. He knows English. He speaks English well. So he is from or has been in the United States for a very long time.
Doug, let me ask you a question right there as a reporter, and you probably can't answer it, but how do we know this if we don't know who he is?
This information has come from, talking to witnesses.
Okay.
Talking to witnesses. And, I get the question all the time, and, I don't have all this information because I don't have this from law enforcement, but I do know that law enforcement has done their best efforts and continue to speak with the witnesses, the people that were in that house. How that is going, I do not know, and how much they have divulged, I do not know. And another question was, is there a sketch yet? And as far as I know, obviously there's not, because it hasn't been made public. There is not enough information to put out a reliable sketch, but I do know that he speaks English very well.
There you go. And that's the question right there, which I was going to come to Scott Duffey on. It appears that whoever was in that LA house would have gotten a good enough look. So, Scott, why no sketch? And what do you think? Two questions. Why no sketch? And what is the Harford County Sheriff's Office doing today, 5+ months later?
So the latter part of that question, I couldn't answer because I just don't know what they are doing or what where they are at their investigation. For the sake of the sketch, I can only speak of when we would utilize a sketch, and when do you market that sketch, put it out there for public consumption. So with regards, obviously they felt very comfortable in putting out, from what we gather, a Ring doorbell that captures his backside and his walking. So there's enough that you want to put that in, right? It's a camera, it's surveillance, and thereby you're not utilizing what's in somebody's head, and then hope that you create the best sketch. So if there's a sketch out there and they're not publicizing it, there are probably good reasons for it. It could be that they're not that the victims or witnesses, whoever has provided info on the sketch, are very sure of themselves, and so thereby you could have two different types of sketches that are possibly showing vastly two different types of individual, and so thereby you're going to confuse the public and so forth. It also can hurt your investigation on the latter part when the subject is is arrested, and the sketch is vastly different. So so those could be some of the things as to why the sketch, if there is one, it's not been put out yet.
And Scott, here's a question for you from Beaker Canner. Question for Scott. That's why it's for you. Should they retest the DNA in case they made a mistake in the lab?
You know, I don't know enough to say. All I can say is, in my 22 years at the FBI and utilizing DNA, in other words, me as an investigator, relying upon a very good crime scene investigator to now submit that evidence to always our lab, and I've utilized outside private labs, that I rely upon their expertise, and when they know something, I accept it. That's I just believe the integrity. For example, CODIS is extremely has just lots of protocols in place, and I have had DNA evidence that I wanted submitted to CODIS, and they wouldn't accept it because of their very strict protocols that are in place, which really shows just how much of an integrity they have to protect the samples they have, right, across the board. And so when I heard, and I'm accepting that it is in CODIS, that then thereby the two different parties, one in California and one in Maryland, that the evidence is pretty good, and so thereby you wouldn't retest, you would accept it for what it is, and of course, like Douglas earlier, what are the sources of that DNA? You know, there's some speculation out there, but only law enforcement on both sides of the coast know, and so thereby, at least from my dealings, I would say that it's very high standard, and so thereby I feel very comfortable that the DNA samples they have are from one and the same person, and have been able to be submitted to CODIS and to meet their high threshold. So I wouldn't say retesting anything is not going to do anything.
Someone pointed out the two stories we've done today. Michelle Traconis, who's accused of helping kill Jennifer Farber-Dulos. Jennifer Farber-Dulos was the mother of 5 children, no longer with us, declared dead by a judge. Her body never found. Her estranged husband committed suicide because he was facing life in prison if his trial didn't go the way he wanted it to. So 5 kids losing their mother and father in that case, and in this case, 5 children missing their mother forever. 37, as Sharon Curlin points out in the chat. That's 10 kids in just 2 cases who lost a mother, and in one case, 5 of them, a mother and a father. Again, please share this, not for these guys necessarily who are doing amazing work, but for Rachel Morin's family. Please do that. Rassler's mom with an interesting comment, and this is the way investigators have to think. What if he's a police officer and the family in California is afraid to come forward? Until that's eliminated, I've learned from guys like Scott Duffey that is a possibility. What is this? New to the case, Rachel Morin was violently attacked and killed on a running trail in Bel Air, Maryland. The suspect was caught on video in LA, and he is being linked to Rachel via DNA, but no one can ID him. The COE putting that down in 2 lines. Very impressive. So now we're going to watch video shot by Tim Papa of Matt McMahon and Rachel Morin's oldest child. This is Rachel's oldest child. Tim, can you just set this up for us before we watch it? It's a rainy day. The audio is a little tough because the rain is pounding down, but what are we going to watch here?
Oh, we ended up going to the site of Rachel Morin's home before she was killed. A few months after the home was demolished. She was a renter, so she wasn't the owner of the home, and the owner demolished it for various reasons. But And I don't think the family knew that had happened. So one of Faye's younger sisters had seen it one day, and that's kind of how they found out. So it's not where Rachel is buried, of course, but it's still another site of mourning or grieving. And so the idea is to, when obviously it's uncomfortable enough for someone to be on camera, but to bring them to a place where they can start thinking about these things and remembering these things, that's an ideal place to have a conversation like this. So that's where Faye is, and it's the first time that Faye's on camera, and it took quite a bit of time for Faye to feel comfortable, understandably, to go on camera. And a lot of this is because she believes her mother would do that, so she wants to do anything she can to support her mother. So that's where she's standing, and we just wanted to capture some things that Faye's feeling and thinking about while she's there.
And just very quickly, why is the home no longer there? I think that was a question we had previously.
My understanding is that the home was in some state of disrepair. So I think that was part of it. And if you go to that location, it's very close to other commercial areas. So I don't know if it's a zoning thing. That's just what I heard from the family.
Okay. But it wasn't a situation where it was too difficult to be in that home or anything, and they raised it and took it down.
No,
because
I don't believe so.
Okay. So everyone, this is Faye, I guess McMahon is probably what she goes by, Matt McMahon's daughter. Let's watch this. It's not long at all, and then we'll probably watch it a second time, and we'll get Tim's reaction to what we see, as well as the geo profiler Doug McGregor and Scott Duffey. This, except for last night on Tim Papa's YouTube channel, the first time we are hearing and seeing Rachel Morin's daughter, Faye. Kudos to her. It takes a lot of courage to do this, to speak out. So here we go.
Can you tell us a little bit about where we are right now?
This is where my mom's house used to be. That's now gone. I just think about going upstairs in my mom's room and laying down with her.
How old are you when you go up and lay down with her?
All the time. I always wanted to.
That's a sweet memory.
I feel like the person who did this took a lot of experiences away from us. We talked about doing a lot of things together, and she's never going to be able to be at my wedding. I'm never going to be able to go to hers. Like, she's never going to be able to meet my kids, and I just feel like we had a lot of plans that we just never get to do anymore because he just took them away one day. And there's just a lot of things that we talked about that we should have been able to do together that is just gone.
And we're going to watch that again. I had to do everything in my power to prevent myself from crying right there. Being the father of three, started to bite on my lip, which seemed to help. Tim Papa, you know, as a news guy and a guy that kind of pays attention to video, because that was the business I was in and still am in, you can't help but notice different camera shots. You go from wide to medium to tight. There's music. I assume this is all deliberate. Can you explain that, and then we'll get to some of the content of the video itself?
Sure. I mean, you don't even have to look at research on how people respond to emotional content. You can think about movies you like or shows you've watched, how it moves you. I mean, no medium moves you quicker and more fully than imagery and sound with the right kind of music. And so putting that music to timing it in terms of when you started to hear a change in tone, people can feel that in their body sometimes, right? And that is also deliberate, but not to manipulate anything. When I'm editing this content, I'm also trying to feel as well, because I'm watching it. I want to keep the pacing without music, but there's a particular piece of music that I feel like matches it. Having the ambient sounds like the rain, yeah, it's maybe a little less clear than people would like, but those kind of shots don't feel controlled. And when people are watching and experiencing content online, they're always kind of evaluating how authentic they feel about what they're seeing. And when you see a shot like that, it's filmed that way and edited that way. It is real, it is genuine, and people, I think, feel that way. And even probably the final part, looking kind of panning to the left where the house was. Yes, I'm also visually creating a space of emptiness, and we don't know everything that she's feeling, but I want people to see that. Or having a moment where you see her up close, and it's in slow motion. Slow motion takes time out of the equation, and people know this is just a little bit more important. And there's a chance just to see Faye for a moment. So there's a lot of qualities of a person and wherever they are in their life that I'm trying to bring to the picture in 2 minutes. Because again, people are consuming all kinds of content all day. And so any chance we have to just bring people to where she is, even hearing those sounds, it's a little gritty and it's dark. It's darker, and maybe people feel like they're kind of there for a moment.
And just to give people some context, because that's kind of my world, in news, an average story, which we call a package in news, runs 1 minute and 30 seconds. I was talking to guys who are experts at TikTok, and they are now putting 10 edits into a second of video in some cases, which is just mind blowing. So the rate at which things are changing and the attention span. When I heard you just say, Tim, that 2 minutes, that's an eternity now, isn't it?
Sure. But if people are interested in that kind of content, they'll keep watching. I think the other part of it too, and you think about like behavioral design, and people can get really lost in the scholarship and research on this, but something like narrative persuasion, that's providing content or a story that's entertaining the people. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, because this is obviously a very heavy and serious topic. What I mean is, for people who haven't had a family member that was taken in the way that Rachel was, there are other ways you can connect with who you're watching. And for them, everyone's been 18 years old before and had all these plans and been hopeful about things in their life. So that's how you connect with people. And this kind of comes down to, it's not really about marketing, but it's about providing a thin slice, they'll call it, of this moment in this person's life. Is it hoped as well that there are people who know this offender who see this and think about some of their own things in their life? Yeah, that is hopeful, but this isn't targeted enough for that. This is very much focused on trying to bring attention to their family and this case.
And by the way, this comment resonates with me. I can still hear her voice and feel her pain in my heart. I'm a very visual person. It's why I'm horrible at languages. I don't listen well. I'm terrible with music. But if I see a face, I'll never forget it. And so seeing this, it's very powerful. Tim, you know, I'm a little slow on the uptake, so sometimes I have to ask questions twice. But what do you do, and what could we as the public do with this video? Is it something that you would share with me, and then I could tweet it out on my Twitter handle, and everyone at STS could then tweet it out themselves and do that on Instagram? Is that the goal of this?
Yeah, no, that's always the goal. There's as much as I can, I want to craft content to reach the right kind of audience. But in this example, the audience is very vast. So there are people who are interested in this, and there's people out there that actually have information. So sharing it as expansively as possible, that would be the most helpful for sure.
Well, if you tag me on Twitter at podcast SES, and I'll shoot you a text. And make sure I get your cell phone, which I think I have, or on Instagram at Surviving the Survivor. I will certainly put this all up. Matt McMahon is still in the chat here. Orange was Rachel's favorite color, and that's why he's got that orange heart up. But I've talked to Matt McMahon. I've talked to a bunch of the Morins, Nate Morin, I had Shannon on, Michael. They're having a hard time. They're having a really hard time. This is one of these shows where It's really all about the family. We got to help them collectively. And there are people watching this show, I'm proud to say now, all over the place. It's weird. I'm getting messages from people in my hometown. I went to the dog to Waggle Brothers. That's where Ethel goes to school. And one of the people who works there, her aunt is a big watcher of the show, and she's in Minnesota. I'm not saying this to brag. I promise you that. What I'm saying is it's kind of far reaching right now. I joke that it's a global show, but it does reach a lot of different people. So let's do our best to please share this. You'll never talk. Carm's going to yell at me, but I sincerely mean that. It will reach a lot of people. So please, let's share. Let's watch this video one more time. Very powerful. And then we'll get both Doug and Scott's take on it. And then soon after that, a couple more questions and we'll start to wrap up. But let's watch this one more time here.
Can you tell us a little bit about where we are right now?
This is where my mom's house used to be. That's now gone. I just think about going upstairs in my mom's room and laying down with her.
How old are you when you go up and lay down with her?
All the time. I always wanted to.
That's a sweet memory.
I feel like the person who did this took a lot of experiences away from us. We talked about doing a lot of things together, and she's never going to be able to be at my wedding. I'm never going to be able to go to hers. Like, she's never going to be able to meet my kids. And I just feel like we had a lot of plans that we just never get to do anymore because he just took them away one day. And there's just a lot of things that we talked about that we should have been able to do together that is just gone. And
Doug McGregor, she talks about how, Rachel's not going to be able to go to her wedding, and she wasn't married, so she wouldn't be able to go to her own mother's wedding. What does this video do to you and for you?
I think it's a great video. I watched the other three as well. This is my first time seeing the one with Faye. It evokes a lot of emotion, and I think, there's one thing that I don't think anybody here in the chat room or any of us understand or know at this point is that we're all here actually because of Faye. So Faye, in a stroke of twisted luck, I guess may have it, she turned 18 just a few weeks before Rachel was murdered. So after Rachel was murdered, and I don't want to point fingers, and the whole family's been doing their thing and dealing with it the best they can. But after Rachel was murdered, the information wasn't coming to Faye. It was going to somebody else in the family as the next of kin. And Faye, after a little while, got up the courage, and she stepped up, and she's 18. And we all know what it was like to be 18 going against adults, our, elders, people older than us. It's not easy. And she stepped up and she took that role, her rightful role as next of kin, because she was 18. And because she did that, the information is coming in and it's being used. It wasn't being used before. It wasn't coming in. I wouldn't even be here. I wouldn't even be helping the family. Matt and Michael, if that information wasn't coming in. So the information is coming in and it's being used in a positive way to find Rachel's killer and, you know, and protect the greater public. But it's important to know that Faye is the reason that we are all here and that we're doing what we're doing.
That's amazing. And by the way, what's also amazing for those who do not know is Doug McGregor, when he works with families like this, he does it pro bono. He does not charge them. This is his business otherwise when he's hired professionally, but he hasn't asked for a cent from the Morins or the McMahons. So there are still good people in the world because everyone's asking what's going on with the world, but still good people. I don't want to crush everyone, but I want Scott to have it fresh in his mind. So let's watch this one last time. It's an amazing video. And if I already said this, forgive me, but Tim was telling me he was the videographer, right, Tim, for the BAU? So you have a lot of experience with this.
Yeah, that it's kind of impromptu. There is opportunity to do that. And I guess the short history is back in 2020, it was a crimes against children cold case, and another profiler I worked with, we talked about it and they were open to the idea of me doing this. And we went down to the cold case unit and said, don't do a press conference. Don't put out a press release. Let's try the video thing first, just for a week before our investigative team went out there. And we made 4 videos. We put them out. It was on a static Facebook page. And in a week, they had something like 40,000 views and 8,000 engagements. And by the time those investigators went into those neighborhoods, everyone had seen the video. And it was such a great demonstration to us of it's not all about tips coming in, but this medium reaches people. And from there, it kind of turned into this, thing that we could provide sometimes on cold cases. And that's kind of how it developed.
Do we know where all the children are there with family members? Thankfully, it's a large family, so I think they're doing well. As a side note, Scott Duffey would always tell the FBI videographer when he was doing a drug bust to only get him from the left side because that is his stronger profile. And if he would ever get it from the right side, Scott Duffey would reprimand him, and at one point would even take them down and attempt to handcuff. That's just a side note, though. Here we go. Video one last time, Scott Duffey. I want to get your take on this. I have to hit play.
Can you tell us a little bit about where we are right now?
This is where my mom's house used to be. That's now gone. I just think about going upstairs in my mom's room and laying down with her.
How old are you and do you go up and lay down with her?
All the time. I always wanted to.
That's a sweet memory.
I feel like the person who did this took a lot of experiences away from us. We talked about doing a lot of things together, and she's never going to be able to be at my wedding. I'm never going to be able to go to hers. Like, she's never going to be able to meet my kids, and I just feel like we had a lot of plans that we just never get to do anymore because he just took them away one day. And there's just a lot of things that we talked about that we should have been able to do together that is just gone. And
it ends with that wide shot in the space. I'm going to pull up this comment from Matt McMahon, then we're going to hear from Scott on this. Tim Papa released additional YouTube shorts of Faye just a few hours ago on his channel. His channel is at storytellers.design, at storytellers.design. And Tim, do you have an Instagram and a Twitter account where you release these videos as well?
No, I don't have Instagram. I just started doing a Twitter today. I mean, it's something that I've been building up on the side, is something whenever I can do it. But yeah, I kind of started on the YouTube page, so I'll probably move to those platforms eventually. But right now, I don't have them yet.
Well, I highly recommend them. I'm the guy that knows the least about technology, but obviously TikTok too. Those are places where things get shared, in a viral fashion. So that would be good. Scott Duffey, you watched that video. Your thoughts?
Mm. This is why you have Tim and Doug and other people who they heard through, whether it be through your show or somebody else throughout the country, right? And I remember, so my thought in wanting to meet with the family, try to offer them whatever I could as an investigator. I also felt like I became somewhat of a protector. And I remember Matt calling saying, "Hey, this Tim Papa guy." And I'm like, "Whoa, well, let's see who this guy is." And because being in the bureau, I'm like, we can quickly find out. And just a minute into the conversation, as Matt pulled us all together in a phone conversation, you can hear his voice. And I was like, I'd confess anything in the world to Tim. And so, yes, I jest a little bit, but look at their real personal, professional merging of their crafts and being able to make it palatable to anybody across the board who might hear this and see this, and all out of generosity of their hearts to offer to a family they did not know, just whatever, um, prior to hearing about it, and how they reached out and traveled a distance. So that it's an amazing thing, and that's what I love about experts like this, but also being from the bureau, how the bureau can pull together so many talents across the board and leave nothing, no stone unturned. And just like Tim had said, oh, kind of became a videographer by mistake. And that's what the bureau does. It says, who wants to raise their hand? Who wants to dive into the deep end on this? And then all of a sudden you realize, wow, I really enjoyed that. And then the bureau is like, throws things at you. It's like, well, here's money, here's funding, here's resources, and just the ability to pull together so many different talents. That's what I think is an amazing thing. And to see the raw footage, and it is real. And Tim's right. There's no exploitation. It is simply allowing the eyes of the camera to tell the story of real victims' families, and that to me, that's just that's very telling. And not only people sharing that, but somebody's going to see it. Somebody is going to listen and keep watching it, that knows something, and it's going to pull at their heartstrings. And that's the hope of all of these different avenues of things to help law enforcement push this to where this guy will be caught.
And it is Tim Papa, Pappa, just for those who are going to search. But his YouTube channel, you see it right there, storytellers.design, and he's got some new videos up there. Tim, do you find it's funny because in the chat, overwhelmingly everyone loved the video, but welcome to my world. Someone said, I don't like the music. Someone else said, I don't like her alone. Anytime you put yourself or something out there, AKA a book, people are going to criticize. I'm going to get pummeled when my book comes out. I curse too much. I curse too little. I cursed at my mom. Act like a 13-year-old, all these things. But do you find that, do you find that the videos overwhelmingly are very much appreciated? And do you also hear some of the criticisms that are tossed your way?
No, I don't really hear the criticisms. I mean,
Good.
I don't. Maybe I don't have enough out there yet. Maybe that'll change, but it's okay. I mean, because I know if you look at how you analyze audiences anyway, there's always going to be segments of people who don't care or they don't respond to it, and that's okay. And a lot of this stuff is going to be crafted for a particular kind of audience. So certainly, there's been times in the past where I've made videos in cases, and yes, I made it in a way where it's like we're just featuring who we see here, but we're going to give them a lot of time because we want to potentially cause some contrast within a family where people feel like, no, I want to come forward and I want to be a part of it, and they're seeing someone else and their family getting all this time and attention. So there can be things like that. That's certainly not happening here in this example, but yeah, there's always going to be people have a different opinion, and that's okay. I obviously kind of obsess over all those little details, but I also have to remember sometimes when people are watching these things, they're not even catching all those things necessarily. But am I spending an inordinate amount of time on the audio in a particular frame? Yes, because I think it matters, but maybe it doesn't matter to a lot of people. Content can just be content. But yeah, overwhelmingly, it's been positive.
The COE, by the way, I know, speaking of video, that it appears like I am looking down. That's because all my information is right here. It's not because I'm ever ignoring anyone, but the COE and Space Coast on the West Coast are working on some way to get me a monitor over there. So it looks like I'm looking at everyone as a minor point. But STS chief of everything, media can be a curse. That is certainly true. We both know that, Bugs, COE. But it is a beautiful tool to showcase the power of connection, love, loss, and humanity. For Faye, let's keep this story alive. Please let us do that. Please share the case info. Faye, we are with you. Yes, we are. And let's also do this. I just subscribed to Tim's channel. Please go to Tim's channel. Get him up to 500 subscribers. Miss Wee Lassie in Scotland, you now have a Scottish subscriber. Let's Meave Moen, Steve Cohen, chief booking producer here. He always says a rising tide, as you know, lifts all ships. So there you go. Let's all help each other. Miranda Lee says, I can't find his channel. Tim, what is it? It's the @ at storytellers.design, at storytellers.design. And it's Tim Papa, Pappa. Scott Duffey, one last investigative question for you, and then we'll get final thoughts from everybody. We'll go around the horn for that. A lot of people are asking about investigative genetic genealogy. We saw that with Brian Kohberger. We saw that with the Golden State Killer. Can we be all but certain that they are trying to do that in this case?
Yeah, I feel comfortable to say that it is in the works. So, like anything else, it's first of all, every tool is a great, piece of the puzzle but at the same time, it's as good as what's in the database. So you take it as far as you can take it, and good investigators can run with great leads. And so it's, I feel very comfortable to say it's in the works, and as well as it should be.
Look at this. Catherine in Hawaii. I said her last name and got yelled at by the COE for that. Subscribe to Tim's channel. Spoiler alert. Faye has some sweet news, so we can head over there afterwards and see what that is. Look at this. It's like why am I blanking on the big hippie move? Woodstock. I couldn't think of it. STS is a giant love fest, just like Woodstock. So there's IGG. For those who do not know, now you know, and he'll be back often. Tim Papa, the PAPPA. My wife is a huge Biggie Smalls fan, for those who do not know. And all I know about him is he is the big POPPA. But this is the big PAPPA. Tim Papa, a certified former profiler with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, very famous, known as the BAU. Papa joined the FBI in approximately late 2008 as a special agent, serving nearly 16 years in various investigative roles, including the last nearly half dozen as an FBI profiler. And while at the BAU, Tim pioneered the development of behavioral content creation. That's what we just saw. Behavioral content creation, supporting state and local cold case investigations across the country. Tim, what is your typical day like now, and your final thoughts on this?
I mean, I transitioned to the private sector and cyber because that's what I usually did at BAU. The great thing, and it's just really been a blessing as I've transitioned, has been having flexibility to work on things like this. And I was also very fortunate and blessed that there are people in this audience and in this community that care and advocate for these families. I've started to grow an experience of like what a lot of these families are going through, because a lot of my experience before was with those law enforcement agencies. So they put me in touch with the Morin family, and I started it as something like, okay, let me just make a couple of videos, but I still talk to people in this family as well. And I'm like, I feel like I'm in for the long haul, right? It's whatever that role might be. Maybe it's more videos, maybe it's not, but yeah, I care about this family, and I never would have crossed their path before. So I feel very blessed in that respect. And I'm just going to trust that path forward, that if there's a way I can contribute, then I will.
This is a great question. Scott, I'm going to throw this out to you. As listeners of terrible crimes, how can we as non-experts help with unsolved cases? Is there something the public can do?
I'm absolutely. The public is, everybody has thoughts, and they might not have gone into law enforcement, but they have fantastic ideas that a detective or an investigator may not have, and especially with shows like this where there's vast amount of experiences for people to offer them up. It may be something that's already been thought of, or it can't be done, or whatever. But by all means, just it's the sharing and the questions and so forth that may or may not be able to be answered. But it's just constant. Think of yourself as one cog in the wheel, and if everybody provides something somewhere in that vast universe, all of a sudden it clicks, right? Either somebody says, "Oh, I know that guy," and I might never even heard that he had committed a crime or whatever. But by all means, I realized as an investigator, I didn't have all the answers. I relied upon my experts within the field, but also outside the field, and to be a good listener. So that's how many of these people are armchair detectives, and they're pretty good at it. So share your ideas and
don't be
help away.
humble, Scott. You did have all the answers, Scott, except you got infuriated when they shot the right side of your face instead of the left side, because you always want to look good. TIMPAPPA, no info for the DEA, followed by this. Joel's a nerd. Yes, that's about the most lyrics I know, and that came from I Am Not T-Pain. I had no idea who I Am Not T-Pain was or is. I barely still do. Doug McGregor. He is better known as the Geo Profiler. He is a forensic behavioral analysis. These are such fascinating careers. He consults in geographic profiling and linkage analysis for violent crime and missing persons. He hails from Ottawa, Canada, which I'm going to get to one day. Everyone says it is beautiful up there. We were just up there with the family in Montreal, and it was a very mild 30 degrees. The following week, they got blasted with a snowstorm, but that's nothing for Doug McGregor. Doug, where do you go from here? For me, this is difficult because I'm a news guy, and we used to have to turn 2 stories every day. Then I'd go home and another 2 stories the next day. This is painstaking. It takes a long time. But Doug, how often do you work on this? What can you do next?
I'm constantly working on this case. Obviously, it has its highs and lows, and there's lulls in there too, because I need the next lead to keep going. But in saying that, and going back to the question that Scott answered, how can the public help? I need tons of help. I need tons of help in every case I work, because it's that littlest piece of information that can help. So, I was going to put a thread up about Rachel's case this week, and I'm still going to post it. I was waiting on some information before I got it out. And in that thread, I'm going to be looking for information. And anybody here in the chat room or anybody else in the public, if they have that information, it will help me do what I do. Now, in saying that, if it's a reliable piece of information about the case, you should call law enforcement. But if you have something that I'm looking for on the side that it isn't directly involved there, then please comment in my X thread, my emails in my profile, and send me that information, because it helps me build my profile. And in the end, anything that I find as well goes to the police. But if you have some reliable information, please call law enforcement. This case, the family is terrific. They've, obviously there's family dynamics in any traumatic event, but, Matt and Michael have come together to help advance this case. The family's lawyer, Randolph Rice, sent 10,000 flyers to the South LA area. I consulted with them, and they reached out to five high schools, or 5 schools in the South LA area as well, around that where that incident occurred. So everybody in their own way is trying to move this case forward and catch Rachel's killer. And it's so important. And I think the one thing you'll notice in this case, and if you really think about it, it's pretty crazy, is that there is no victim blaming in this case. You always get trolls in cases. There's no victim blaming in this case. This could have been any one of us. Rachel didn't do anything wrong. She didn't do anything risky. She was jogging in daylight in a populated, well-lit area. There hasn't been victim blaming. Everybody wants to see this killer caught, because it could have been any one of us, male, female. It could have been any one of us. This person needs to get caught. And just it shows how much, like, to me personally, in my experience on Twitter or X, most of my posts I put up, they get under 5,000 impressions. Okay, that's big for me, huge for me. All right, but the last one I put up before Christmas about Rachel had 80,000 impressions. All right, and that says nothing about me. That says everything about Rachel, and everybody cares about Rachel, her family, and wanting to find justice for her. So this case is still very much alive. Posting those things online, I mean, what Tim's doing is fantastic. Scott being there for both of us, and it's keeping Rachel's case alive, and it has to stay alive, because this person has to be caught. It could have been any one of us.
Very well said. Matt McMahon back in the chat. This is Faye's father. Obviously closely connected with Rachel, since Rachel is Faye's mother. The detectives have specifically told me that keeping Rachel's name alive in the media is keeping the tips coming in. So, said it before, I will say it again. Not for me, not for these 3 guys, but for Matt McMahon and his family and the Morins. Please share this story. On YouTube, I'll put out a link on Twitter and on Instagram. Please share the story. Last but certainly not least, and he'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern time, Scott Duffey is director of Wilmington University's Criminal Justice Institute in his office for the first time. He's in the office one day every 3 years, and today's that day. So looking good in there. He was the supervisory special agent at the Wilmington, Delaware office, handling violent crimes across the spectrum, gangs, bank robberies, fugitive task force cases, and was 5.5 years police officer in the Commonwealth of PA. Scott Duffey, I asked you this at the beginning. I'll ask you at the end in your final thoughts. Are they going to catch this dude?
Yes.
This guy.
Absolutely. They are going to catch him. And every day that goes by is another day that he could potentially hurt somebody else. So he, if you know him, just put a name anonymously somewhere in the tip line. It's posted, pretty much everywhere, and or call your local police office, your local department, and say, I got a tip, and it will find its way to Harford County Sheriff's Office. So he will absolutely be caught.
Glad to hear that. Special shout out to Matt McMahon for helping facilitate this, and all the Morins out there, Nate, Michael, Shannon, the entire family, obviously Faye as well. Sweet and Salty says, thank you for sharing these stories with us. We want to help. Hopefully Tim will tag me today on Twitter at Podcast STS, and I'll tweet out the videos from there. So that is that. A quick lineup for tomorrow. At 9:15, Tim Jansen is going to be with me, and we're going to cover the Courtney Clenny hearing. She's the OnlyFans murder person. She's about to stand trial for killing her 27-year-old boyfriend by stabbing him. There's new video out of her abusing him. 10 a.m., we're going to pivot and have the trial. Michelle Troconis, the trial will run, and you guys can chat amongst yourselves, and I will bounce in and out. And then at 5 o'clock tomorrow, Phil and Scott Duffey, Phil Waters, America's most respected detective, and Scott Duffey will be here, and we'll play some interrogations, as Phil likes to call it, interviews with Michelle Troconis and Fotis Doulos, the man that unalived himself, as Phil would say. We'll play some interrogation videos for those guys to break down. The body in that case is still not there, but got to thank these three gentlemen. Incredible. Law enforcement gets a bad rap sometimes, but this is why it definitely should get a great rap. These guys doing this all of their own volition, traveling even from Canada to help out. Canada, our friends to the north. Thank you. Thank you to everybody. Till tomorrow. Love you, America. Love you, Canada. Love you, everyone.